tradition also tells us why Saint Mark wrote his Gospel. Today, on the 25th of April, we celebrate the feast of a very important saint in the history of the Catholic faith, the feast of Saint Mark the Evangelist. Saint Mark is one of the 4 principal evangelists of the Church. The title evangelist comes from the Greek word evangelion, which means good news. The English word gospel too comes from the same word and means the same. So, an evangelist is anyone who proclaims the gospel or good news. The good news that Jesus Christ has won salvation for all people through his incarnation, passion, death, and resurrection. The 4 principal evangelists of the Church are those 4 saints who proclaimed this good news by writing it down. Their writings are the 4 Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John that we find in the Bible. By writing down what they received directly from Jesus himself or his apostles and immediate disciples, these 4 evangelists made it possible for us even today to read the life, actions, and teachings of Jesus. This is why Saint Mark the Evangelist is such an important figure in the history of the Church. So who was Saint Mark, and what do we know about him? According to church tradition, he was a Jew who was convinced of the Christian faith by Saint Peter after the resurrection of Jesus. After his conversion, he became a disciple and companion of Saint Peter. Saint Jerome says that it is to Saint Mark that the first letter of Saint Peter, chapter 5, verse 13, refers to when it says, "My son Mark also sends you greetings." Further, tradition also tells us why Saint Mark wrote his Gospel. The Christians in Rome who were converted by the preaching of Saint Peter wished to have a written account of what Saint Peter had preached and taught them about Jesus. It is at this request of theirs that Saint Mark wrote his Gospel, basing it primarily on the eyewitness testimony of Saint Peter himself, who walked, talked, and experienced Jesus before and after his resurrection. This is why the Gospel of Mark is also sometimes referred to as the Gospel of Saint Peter. Saint Mark was later sent by Saint Peter to Egypt and made Bishop of Alexandria. At Alexandria, after many years, he was brutally martyred for preaching the Gospel. His body tied to a cart of oxen and dragged on the ground for almost 2 whole days. But not once did he deny Jesus or the gospel that he preached. My dear brothers and sisters, in today's gospel passage taken from Mark chapter 16, Jesus says, "Go into the whole world and proclaim the gospel to every creature." And this is what we see perfectly lived out in the life of Saint Mark the Evangelist. Not only did he proclaim the gospel by his preaching and writing, he proclaimed it to the highest degree by dying for it. By giving up his life for it, he proclaimed that the gospel of Jesus is truth, that it is even worth dying for, that its value is greater than that of one's own life itself. Dear brothers and sisters, the command of Jesus to proclaim the gospel is for all. As Christians, we are all called to be evangelists of the gospel of Christ. Like Saint Mark, we are called to bear witness to Christ by our words, our deeds, our lives, and even our deaths. Let us imitate his example and never be afraid or ashamed to proclaim Jesus Christ to the world. May we always remember the words of Saint Paul in Romans chapter 1 verse 16, which says, "I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who has faith." Amen.